Welcome to the Great Ideas Podcast, where we explore many topics, including leadership, teamwork, relationships, business, politics, pop culture, health, sports, food, and anything else that's a great idea. I'm your host, Barry Moline. Today, we're talking with Michael Crowl, the CEO of University Federal Credit Union, or UFCU. Michael shares his unconventional career path, his leadership philosophy, and the importance of member satisfaction at the credit union. He discusses UFCU's focus on consumer banking, strategic decisions, and adapting to trends like digital transformation and AI. Welcome, Michael. It's great to see you.
You as well, Barry. Thank you for having me today.
Well, Michael, you're the CEO of University Federal Credit Union, and I'd like to explore your history and your journey to becoming the CEO. And as you describe that, can you talk about some of the big lessons you've learned along the way?
Sure. Yeah, lots of lessons. That could be a podcast in of itself, most likely, right? I think one doesn't get to this role without making several along the way. But my journey to CEO, yeah, it's frankly, until probably a little over 10 years ago, it wasn't something a role that I aspired to, but it happened here at UFCU when I became CFO, many years ago. Had the opportunity to, obviously join the executive team, and as part of that journey, essentially of becoming CFO and then growing in that role, I had an opportunity to take on other responsibilities along the way. And it was through that I got closer and closer to our, in our case, a member, right, customer. And, had an opportunity to really work through most parts of the organization. And through that began developing my own kind of vision for where I saw the organization headed. And of course, that then led me to think, well, if I have my own vision for where I think we should go, then perhaps the role of CEO would make sense. And I think it was really a process by which it just kind of emerged as my focus on helping run an organization that delivers, great value for its customers, and in our case, members, and for obviously a great place for folks to want to work as well.
So in your career, did you start at UFCU, or were you working in financial jobs beforehand? Were you in accounting? What was your background there?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm a CPA, but I don't have an accounting degree. So whole other topic for that. But I actually started out as an investment banker.
Does that mean that you studied accounting on your own and took the test to become a CPA?
I did. I actually took, I saw the importance of accounting and finance. And so I have a finance undergrad. When I graduated, I was only, I think, 3 courses short of the hours needed to sit for the CPA. So I went back and took them, and then didn't take the CPA exam until I think it was 13 years after I graduated. So who knew right at the time? And I didn't really have the intention of becoming a CPA, but I was like, well, if maybe someday, right, if I wanted to have the opportunity, at least I'll have the classes under my belt. So yeah, so that's how that happened.
Okay. Well, at least you were working in that area. It's not like you were in sports marketing and said, you know what, I think I'll take the CPA exam. I mean, it was still within your...
Oh yeah, very much as an investment banker, certainly, right, as you're coming through financial statements and understanding how the interaction and interplay between them. So did that for a number of years, then became I was a CFO of a software startup here in the Austin area, and eventually made my way to becoming joining a credit union, which is most folks don't go to college or graduate high school and say, I'm going to go work for a credit union, right? They find their way to a credit union, and I'm sure glad I did that. That's over 20 years now ago.
Ah, okay. And for how long have you been CEO?
So my predecessor and I overlapped for about 6 months, but that was in the late 2022. And then he formally retired in early 2023. So two and a half years.
Got it. Now, you mentioned sort of a strategic planning or having this more of a global perspective of UFCU. Is that a role that you had that you were responsible for before you became CEO?
My predecessor was very, very good about kind of sharing that responsibility of strategy with the entire executive team. And so it's something we worked on with the board hand in hand. So the exposure to strategy development and kind of the supporting processes around it was something I'd been exposed to, at least here, since really day one in the role. And even before that to a degree. So I think that understanding of the strategic aspect of things is, thankfully, again, has been something that I've been exposed to. And I think I've clearly benefited from it because, when you take in the seed, it's not something that I had to learn. It was something that I'd already learned along the way.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, being a CEO means that you're responsible for a lot of things. Ultimately, you're responsible for everything. You have a lot of people working on your team, of course. So you've got your service, your products, your members, your staff, the broader community. It's kind of an awesome responsibility. How do you see this awesome responsibility? How do you see all the pieces of this puzzle?
I don't know if I see all the pieces of the puzzle, but I think I try to, right? I think for me, that awesome responsibility really comes down to not only am I the CEO of this organization, but, as a member-owned cooperative, where our shareholders and customers are actually one and the same members. I think that responsibility is frankly magnified, right? Because when a customer, i.e. our members call us or come to a branch or using our applications, they're also our owners. So they're member owners in a lot of ways, right? So, and we're also, on top of that, we are, entrusted to be good stewards of their money, right? So they're trusting us with their money, their hard-earned dollars and cents. And, think about with all of that as the backdrop, then, as you mentioned, ensuring that the services and the products and the advice that we provide all meet and exceed their expectations. And then, kind of lastly, I think about it from the perspective of UFCU is almost 90 years old. And so we have this legacy of positive impact. So there's a tremendous responsibility. And, I think for me, it's obviously honoring the past and those who came before us and help create this great place, but also helping point us in the direction to have even greater impact going forward. So I think, and you're right. Then there's all the external, there's the community, there's part of being part of the credit union industry more generally as well. They call the movement. Those are all part of the role. You really can't ignore. I mean, you certainly have to be intentional about where you spend your time. And that's one of the things about lessons learned. Kind of going back to your first question was, I think the increased importance as one grows and the responsibility is being intentional about what you focus on, where you dedicate your time, learning, what you're going to say yes to and what you're going to say no to as well.
Is there a particular element or area of the credit union that you pay closer attention to than others? Or is everything about equally responsible? Now, before you answer that, I know you love all of your children equally. So so we don't want to suggest that some folks are less important than others. But even still, I'll tell you this briefly. Yeah. When I was in graduate school, I was in a business class and we had a whole semester. It was a great class. And the very last question that somebody asked our instructor, who worked at a bank, said, we've had this interesting class. What's really the most important thing? And he was like, and he thought about it and he said, I have one thing that I pay close attention to, and that is cash flow. If you're going to run a business, you got to have cash, or you got to have a source, a credit union or a bank or somebody that can give you cash. But nevertheless, you got to watch your cash because you got to pay people. And that was a great bumper sticker. I still think about it today, sure. Many, many years later. Sure. So back to the question, is there one area that you tend to pay more attention to?
For me, I'd say it's really those member elements. So member satisfaction, member loyalty. What are our members? We have a very strong surveying process of our members for their interactions with us. And, what are those survey results telling us about their experiences with us? And then I'd say kind of complementary to that is, how's our net membership growth? Are we seeing membership growth as a result it's an indicator obviously of our relevance and actually more of how compelling are we in the marketplace if we're growing, especially if we're growing faster than we're seeing the general population here and or peers as well. So those are the ones I look at. Of course, they're all important too. obviously the financial results you see monthly and those things, of course, are important. You want to make sure we're running a good business, but it's really those elements about the member experience and member growth.
So on the member experience, member satisfaction, member loyalty, how do you get that feedback? Is it through regular surveys? Do you do, I'm not sure what you might call it, focus groups? Do you actually talk to people?
Oh, yeah.
How do you go down that road?
We do all of the above. So we have a surveying system that sends out, I'm going to misstate the number here, but I want to say it's several thousand surveys go out on a daily basis here. And they're either triggered by a relationship-based survey, meaning that you're a member of UFCU and have been for some time, and we're going to survey your sentiment about the organization, or perhaps you called or you recently used the digital application, mobile application. It'll trigger a survey as well to ask you about your interactions there. And it collects a tremendous amount of information about the experience. So member effort score, ease of use, just other things along those lines, essentially. And then there's the opportunity for the free form comments too. And so we really can so we're always looking for what's the sentiment, and are there areas where we're delighting folks and areas that we're not? And then what are we going to do about it, right? And so, yeah, and we have focus groups that as part of our generative research that we do here. And then I think for us too, of course, the opportunity the ad hoc conversations that occur as a result of just being out in the community and people tell you about their experiences and whatnot. And so I think all that is, again, kind of captured, and most of that's captured in our central repository for that information that then feeds out the insights to the organization around areas of opportunity, and also kudos for staff when they're doing something really well.
So you get all that information. How does it get shared with your staff to understand how their actions are impacting members?
Today we have our marketing team is responsible for kind of oversight of the system, and then they do the synthesis of it and all the results, and then they share out a detailed report to the organization monthly that highlights again not only the results, but in terms of the numerical results, but then what are the sentiments that are emerging from the comments and whatnot, and trying to link it back to did we make a change in a certain part of the business that either had a positive impact or negative? And, if so, again, if it's something positive, how do we do more of that? And if it was negative, how might we make other changes to help improve their experience?
Interesting. And do you ever have members that say, this stunk or whatever, I'm unhappy? Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
And then how deep do you go with those members in response or in trying to correct things?
So we have service level agreements internally where if we get a survey score net NPS goes up to 10. I can't remember if it's at what level it triggers. If it's a negative score, essentially, right? A detractor, they call it. We have a service level agreement internally so the team sends out these alerts. I think it's actually automated, that we expect our teams to reach out. So let's say, Barry, you went to a branch and you weren't happy with the experience there, and you fill out a survey. That survey is going to get routed to the branch manager, and got all the system built. It's all built in the system. Essentially, we'll know how long it is until you respond to that member. So the intention is that you reach back out to the member and talk to them about their experience. So that, or, of course, if we get emails, I think members, as member owners, our members are very happy to share their feedback, no matter what it may be, oftentimes. And so, I'll take phone calls or emails, and, oftentimes I'm not the right person to be able to answer the question for them, but certainly can help get them in the right place and ensure that their concerns are getting met. And a lot of times what we hear is, usually an experience didn't go well for some particular reason, but our members really appreciate that they get a call back or they get an email, that we actually respond to them.
Yeah.
And they feel better just the fact that we heard them and we listened, and certainly if something we can address, we will, or if it's just explaining why we did something in terms of here's the new change or experience and here's why, they appreciate the opportunity to at least have been heard and then understand the why.
Yeah, I agree. That is important. And just the fact that you spend so much time or making it a priority, the fact that you make it a priority so that I presume branch managers, everyone at the staff level who's either interacting with customers or maybe including everyone, because somewhere along the line, whatever it is you do impacts members.
Absolutely.
Are they all tuned in to their concern or your concern for member service?
I feel that we are, certainly the folks who are serving the members directly. There's no question about it, right? But I think even in the back office, there's a lot of, let's say, ownership of the experience, and people realize that if let's say you're in our IT group or some other back office function that doesn't directly impact members, things that they do from a process sometimes or others, they do have impacts, right? And so we're always trying to make sure, again, that feedback makes its way from the front line or from the member back through the organization, that we're holding one another accountable about that.
Yeah, that's great. And when you're engaging, I mean, in a general way, when one is engaging with an organization that is concerned about customer service, you can feel it. Even if you're dealing with the website alone and no people, you can get a sense that, oh, this website is interacting with me in a positive or proactive way. And then if I have a concern, I can chat with somebody on my computer screen, or maybe even talk to somebody if necessary. I've dealt with organizations where it's just there's a black hole. You need help. I can't figure something out, and there's no way to talk to anyone or to get any feedback. So to have so much emphasis on member service, I'm sure members feel good about that.
They usually do. Yeah. We actually, in our aspiration is to be loved by millions of members and built for generations. So that loved word is a high bar. And the reason we chose it, because our members tell us that. And so in our survey responses, I haven't seen lately the latest kind of around this, but at one point, 1 in every 7 of our surveys, our members were mentioned in the free-form responses, mentioned the word love. And so I asked the company that does this, that provides the system, because they actually do this for about 180 credit unions across the country, can you associate the NPS score, so Net Promoter Score, and love and financial performance? And when they did their analytics around it, they said, absolutely, we can. We can tell if you're high performing around the mention of the word love, that it's correlated to higher NPS scores.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it's something that, I was proud of it for us, that again, we could have left that out.
Yeah.
Right. Just to be millions of members, but to be loved requires a whole different level of concern for one's members.
Yeah. That is great.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, okay. So back to you.
All right.
Back to Michael as a child.
Uh-oh.
Is this what you wanted to be when you grew up? or did you have some idea, astronaut, brain surgeon? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think growing up, the world seemed a lot smaller back then, perhaps. And I think, I think back, I wouldn't say there was any like one particular profession, or probably because I didn't really know a whole lot about those other than the roles I interacted with, teachers and firefighters and police and whatnot, but the, public officials. But I'll tell you what, as I think about this more, I'd say it's probably maybe a scientist would be something. And the reason I say that would be, I always liked working on challenging problems and like getting kind of deep into them. I was always taking things apart to understand how they worked, so electronics or something mechanical, and then trying to make two things into one sometimes, right? So, like visualizing something new. I really enjoyed math as a child. So a funny story about that is my teachers had to have a parent-teacher conference when I was in elementary school. And the topic was that Michael's doing too much math. Like, he can't do math in every subject. He can't ignore the subject he's in just to do math. So we need you to help us with that. So to give a little insight into who I am, kind of the inner nerd that is Michael Crowl. So
that's interesting. Being so focused on math, analytics, and so on, is it a challenge to have to focus in other areas like member service?
I think it would have been for me years ago, frankly. And I think, one of the reasons I was drawn to a career in finance, right, was because the numbers and the analytics aspects of things. But frankly, I think thankfully over time, as I've grown, while I still enjoy some of that to the degree, people are a whole lot more interesting, right, to me. And so, I think I'm much more well balanced, and a lot of that probably has to do with my wife, who is very kind of social and outgoing, and very, very empathetic and focused on people. I think the two of us have helped balance each other out over the years.
That is good. And so you've grown in that area. And then also you're involved in the community as well.
Very much
right?
So. Very much so.
Yeah. And I would presume it wasn't just the last couple of years. This is an evolution of engagement in the community. Has that helped you as well in developing relationships and recognizing the value of relationships and so on?
No doubt about it. I think that external engagements have been really important. And I think one thing about you're probably getting the sense for, hopefully you're getting the sense for UFCU is a very relational place. I think it all starts again with those member ownership and how we treat our members and care for them and then our teams. And so relationships are key here. And when I first joined UFCU, one of those kind of lessons learned along the way, I was really focused on call it the quality of my work, the work I did, basically like the what of my job. And because that's what was valued in my prior roles mostly, is people valued the output of your work. And relationships weren't as important. Whereas at UFCU, they're as important. They're equally as important, if not a little bit more. And I think for me, it was okay. I need to focus on the relational aspects of things. And now I like to say, that it's kind of leading from a heart and head space, right? An integrated leadership approach versus whether I'm inclined to lead in one or the other. It's making sure that it's an integrated approach to my leadership and how I'm showing up.
Yeah, fascinating. So in your leadership journey, was there a moment that you can point to and say, yeah, now I feel like a leader, or this just happened? What was there an experience that you had?
So is that meaning a good leader or no, I don't want to, I'm kidding. Obviously I think one thing my mom used to say is she always told me I was inclined to be more of a natural leader. I think it was because probably because I was kind of hard-headed and stubborn. That probably helped out. But I had a strong vision for something and then I've worked toward it, I think. And I had a way of kind of rallying others and selling them on that vision too. I also like helping, something I've always liked to, even though, again, mentioned kind of the numbers and being mathematically oriented. I've always enjoyed helping others, kind of coaching them and helping them achieve things that were beyond what they thought was possible. I think, which is clearly a result of others doing the same for me too. Having belief in me and kind of challenging me to again, achieve something that, maybe I'm not even thinking about or even aware of. Right. And so I wouldn't say it was something I set out to do, but certainly have invested a lot of time and resources in honing my leadership. Right. Because I think I'm a leader, if I turn around, there's nobody behind me, I'm not a leader, right? Because leadership requires one being worthy of being followed, right? I think that's the journey I've certainly been on the last 15 years or so, is a heavy investment in my leadership. And that's really my predecessor, big emphasis on that for himself and for others. And we have an organization here that will invest a lot of resources in the development, not just of your career skills, but your leadership too. So
at UFCU, you were getting, for lack of a better way to say it, trained in the elements of leadership. I'll tell you that having a mom say something like, you're a leader, or what I can see you doing, no, that's leadership, or for however she phrased it, that's, a real shot in the arm. Having that level of, having a parent have that level of confidence, or at least just seeing it in you.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
That's a good morale boost.
That belief, right? She had that confidence, right? And instilled that in me, right? So it's very much part of fiber.
So you've mentioned UFCU a bunch of times here, and we've talked about your work. Tell me about the company. What products and services do you offer? What's your value proposition to your members?
Yeah. So UFCU, again, I think I mentioned earlier, 90-year-old financial cooperative that has now over $4 billion in assets and over 400,000 members across not only Central Texas, all across Texas, and really across the nation as well. And so for us, it's again, being member centric and focused on them. We also focus on their needs from mostly the consumer and small business perspective. So we're our value proposition that we're focused on leaning into is providing the best omni-channel consumer banking experience. So kind of underneath that, you have three primary lines of business, I'd say, or areas that we can best help our members, which are our consumer lending, our everyday banking and payments, so money movement and checking, those kind of products, and even some of your savings and deposits, and then other deposits, as well as mortgage lending. And so we strive to do all those, not only individually do those well, but also that they're integrated too in terms of the experiences that you have. And so are we fully there? No. It's certainly a journey, right, where we want to have better opportunity for that true omni-channel. Again, the word's been around for a while, in terms of allowing folks not only to choose the channel that they want to interact with us in, but also they can channel hop, right? And not lose a beat between those. So if they move from the phone to a in-person interaction or to a digital interaction, it just seamless and picks up where it was before.
Yeah. Is it focused just on, well, actually the question better asked in reverse. Do you do any commercial financial activity, or is it all, I'm not sure what the other, I would call it residential. Is it a mix of business and, well, how do you phrase the other, other category of members?
It would be like, some would either call it consumer and commercial, or retail and commercial.
Sure. Yeah.
We don't do commercial. It's actually an area of the business that we were doing as a result of wanting to lean in and become the best at our omni-channel consumer banking experience. We decided to stop lending there, even though the team that was doing that work was doing great work. We said, there's not an area we feel like we can truly differentiate and have a outsized impact, whereas we think we really can on the consumer side. So that's, we've really leaned in there in the last year.
Wow. So you've sort of separated that part of the business, or moved away from the commercial part?
Yeah, we just stopped offering it, frankly.
Yeah.
So it was a matter of course, honoring the loans and whatnot that were in the pipeline, but
sure,
we're not making new loans in that area, and kind of shrunk the area of also shrunk it as we just still have some of those loans on the books and service, but ultimately we will completely exit that line of business. So
yeah, that is fascinating to recognize internally that if you focus more attention in this one area of success, you can be even better, as opposed to spreading your talent across different sectors. Was that the thought process?
Very much so. Yeah. It's like, where do we think we can, again, provide the greatest value and the greatest opportunity for the organization? And I'm sure you see this, and as you talk to leaders on this podcast and otherwise, and you've been a CEO as well, that, I can't tell you how many people I talk to and surveys that show the number one issue for most organizations is focus. There's so much opportunity out there, right, that we tend to oftentimes pursue it. And as you said earlier, you can't be everything to everyone and do it well. And so for us, it's, this is a journey that we set out more intentionally, I'd say, in the last year about this. And so, you make hard choices, right? That's, sometimes that's hard for credit unions, again, because we're member owned, right? We're so relational. It's easy to start new things. It's oftentimes very hard to stop doing things. And that was those areas, again, that I'm glad that we did, just from the perspective of, again, the greater focus.
Yeah, I think that's a bold move. Many, many years ago, when I was relatively new in my leadership role running an organization, I presented to my board the opportunity to get into a new line of business. It was still related to what we did in the energy world, but nevertheless, this would have been a new level of activity, hiring some people, working with some outside contractors, and then hopefully growing that part of the business separate from what our core business was. Okay. And I thought I presented a superb value proposition, and the board said, "Oh, we really like this. This is awesome, but we don't want you to do it. We'd rather give it to a sister organization or someone else, because you're doing such a good job in the core. Why don't you innovate there? Innovate as best as you can there." And afterwards, I was a little mopey for a little bit, but I thought really carefully about what they said, and they were complimentary. They said, "You're doing a great job. Let's be the best in our core area." And it turned out to be a smart decision. As much as I wanted to grow the business, to be giant in many ways, they said, let's be, outstanding in our fractal, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a smart move. You know, what you said is sometimes saying no to things helps you focus your attention on the things that you do well.
It's interesting that you use the expression bold move, because the McKinsey has research about, there's a book called Beyond the Hockey Stick, and it talks about which levers you can pull in the business that have the greatest value in terms of delivering value to your stakeholders, and they're labeled bold moves. And so as part of we had a strategy, and from that strategy last year, we developed our bold moves. So we have a series of 7 bold moves that we're actually executing upon. And commercial was one of those. Exiting that line of business was one of those 7.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So you didn't even need to do the McKinsey research. You already knew it.
Well, it was an iterative process.
There you go. Yeah.
So in the credit union world, what kind of trends are you seeing? And by the way, I'm not sure this is solely focused on credit unions, sort of in the business world. What trends are you seeing?
Oh gosh, I think it'd be hard to say AI is not changing the world, right? I think there's so much talk about the need for digital transformation for organizations, right? It's how do we transform ourselves for a digital world? And now you have AI in the mix. You're generative AI in the last couple of years, especially in the accessibility of that technology. And for me, when I get outside of my industry and talk to others, you see the speed at which they are experimenting and utilizing AI. It makes me feel like, boy, we need to speed it up, obviously in a responsible, ethical way. But there's so much opportunity here. And, I think, there's been technologies along the way that we are sometimes touted as game changing and they don't pan out. But this one certainly seems like it's, from my perspective, that it's, and I've heard others say this too, right? That it's, I certainly didn't trademark it, but this is akin to what the internet did 25 years ago. AI can be that and even more in a lot of ways, right? And so I think for us, it's about, how do we use it internally in the organization, right? One, to, let's say, run a better organization, but also challenging ourselves to say, how do we utilize it to benefit our members too? More directly, and whether that's the better utilization of all the data that we as a financial institution have. How do we use AI to analyze and synthesize and create insights for our actionable insights for our members to be able to benefit from as well? Yeah.
It's tough to stay on top of everything that's changing with AI. It's particularly, within the business, what's also important is just to see what colleagues are doing, competitors are doing, and staying on top of it that way as well. You don't have to be serial number 001 on everything. You can, but paying attention and making sure that you measure twice, cut once, or, pilot projects to see what works is always a good way forward. I don't know. It's one of those areas. I'll tell you one area or application of AI that I thought was a really nice one. I worked in the utility industry for many years, and somebody who, this was a customer service application, and they took the frequently asked questions list that a lot of organizations put on their website and just put that into a bot that could understand questions that people might ask of the bot. And then it would have pretty much a standard answer or a link to a form of some sort. And then when people monitoring that bot to see what are the new questions that people are asking, and then to have someone answer those questions and then put it back in the bot, or having the bot be able to learn the answer, whatever, just interaction that way. A lot of times, those, for simple things, you can deal with some members that way, but other times they have to talk to a human. They just, when they're talking about specific issues related to their account, for example. But I thought that was at least one good application of AI. I think to me, I had a leader many, many years ago
say, Michael, you're only limited by your imagination, right? I think it was his way of saying, yeah, don't limit yourself, right? And I think the AI seems like it's one of those things, right? That it's, in a lot of ways, you are kind of only limited by your imagination in terms of its applications and uses.
I suppose we could just ask AI, what are the best applications for the use of AI
there you go.
in our world? Yeah.
Probably could. That's right.
All right. So I have a couple of quick questions about you, Michael, sort of lightning round.
All right.
What kind of things do you do outside of work that help you clear your mind?
I like to run. I think getting outdoors, kind of anything outdoors for the most part. I like just being outside. I think it's always helps me with a reset. I think that, of course, spending time with my family, my friends, right? I think those things help me certainly unwind. And they also, I think, help provide perspective, right? We can get so focused on the challenges or, the issues in one's work that sometimes the world seems like it gets smaller, right? Because you're so focused on something. But when you let yourself get out and outdoors or again, interacting with others, it broadens one's perspective again.
Yeah, that's really good. And then maybe it takes your mind off your day to day and allows your brain to, I don't know, rest and relax. Yeah.
Sure. Right.
So do you have a recommendation for a good book? Well, let's see. On a good book, you did mention the Beyond the Hockey Stick from McKinsey, but other recommendations for a good book, a movie, maybe something to stream?
Yeah, gosh, there's so much there too. I'll go with a book. I think I'll go with a book that one of my board members shared with me, which is called The Geek Way.
Huh.
It's about mindset. Like they're in their research and their experiences, the mindset of companies that are able to provide the greatest value to customers while building a strong organization. I think it's been a very easy to understand book and challenge oneself. Say, am I demonstrating these characteristics and qualities in my mindset? If not, why not? Right. And how do I do that?
Wow. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. All right. The Geek Way. I like that.
The Geek Way. Yep.
Yeah, and it makes you smile when you hear it too. That's good. All right, favorite foods? Yeah, you don't have to say barbecue just because you're in Austin.
Well, I do like barbecue. I like Tex-Mex for sure. Yeah, it's not uncommon for us to eat that 3 or 4 times a week here. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and there's plenty of that as well.
Oh, yeah, a great Tex-Mex here in Austin.
So is there a brand that you stand for? Is there like a word or a phrase that you live by?
I don't have, word or that I live by necessarily, but I think I'd say that what others have told me, and I think these are things that are important to me too, are I think first and foremost integrity. Right? Like integrity really matters for me, and I think you'll see that people who know me well will tell you that they get a strong sense of how important that is to me. And then I'd say the other would be authenticity. That's what I'd say I've grown into over time, right? That of living and leading from a place of authenticity or again, and then helping others do the same, should they, because I think early in our careers, it's not uncommon, right, for us to put on a persona to be successful in work that oftentimes, isn't necessarily who you are, it's how you're being, right? And I think as I've gotten over time through a lot of leadership coaching and mentoring and whatnot is, all right, stop trying to be somebody else. Just be you. Be the best version of you. Right. That's oftentimes the advice I give people is like, learn to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, that's really good. Really important. Hey, we're all human and we're coming to work and it's hard to just shut that part off. We don't want to shut it off.
No, exactly.
All right. So last 2 questions about advice.
All right.
First, what's some good advice that you've received in your life?
God, again, another whole podcast. I think. So good advice and advice that I should have acted on, right? So there's a lot over the years. I think, I'll go a little deeper on this one. I'd say, I think for one to know one's true values, spend the time to understand what your values are. And some of that's going to be aspirational, right? We're never going to, because you said we're human beings, right? We're never going to live 100% into those values. I went through an exercise years ago with a professional coach who at the beginning of the program had me list my 5 values. And then at the end of it, after I'd gone through the program, they were completely different because the ones I initially had listed were a little bit more superficial, I'd say. They weren't really my values. And so those are things I still anchor in today. And I think if you know who you are and what your values are, and you look through that lens of decision making and those things you do in your life, no matter what's going on around you, you can stay rooted in those values. And I think that's it's hard work, but it's well worth the effort.
Yeah, I'll say. And it just allows you to experience the world and then come back to that touchstone of your values and recognize, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Or is it consistent with your values?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So last question, somebody just coming out of high school or college, maybe entering the world of work,
okay,
a young person, what kind of advice would you give them?
Say first, if you can, strive to maximize your 401k match, right? Like start early, right? The power of compounding. But on the career side, I think be curious, build the relationships, get involved in other parts of the business, understand your customers' needs. So, maybe if you're in some role that is not interacting with members or your customers, right, on a daily basis, get out from behind the computer screen or wherever you are and get to the customer and understand those things. And then something we touched on earlier too, which was, engaging externally. I think all those things require action, right? There's versus a passivity about it, right? So be active, right? And I think oftentimes early in one's career, it seems like you've got forever your career is going to, you've got just so much time ahead of you, right? And so I think sometimes we undervalue time. And I think, again, the more intentional you are about those things and putting yourself out there and trying new things, and the relationships and people you'll meet along the way and experiences you'll have that'll positively impact you in ways you never would have. There's a great quote in a book from Richard Rohr. He talks about that we don't think our way to a new way of living, right? That we live our way to a new way of thinking. And I think that's being intentional about how you're living will influence how you're thinking.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And in light of these things, phones and people constantly looking down at their phones, that's a call to look around you and engage with your outer world.
Absolutely.
And that's great advice. Well, thank you, Michael. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you.
You're leading a wonderful organization with, really focused, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Likewise. I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks to Michael Crowl for being our guest today. And thank you for listening. If you want to get in touch, or if you have an interesting topic and know someone you think would be a great guest on the show, send me an email at barry@barrymoline.com. And please leave a 5-star review, which helps others find their way to the Great Ideas Podcast.